Discover the heartwarming moment a black CEO overcame a cake attack, revealing a $4.2 billion triumph. Ellen Carter stood at the front of the boardroom, her heart racing. Today was the day. After years of hustle and grit, she was about to launch a product that could change everything for her community in Detroit. The energy was electric, filled with a sense of hope and determination, a feeling she inherited from her grandmother, a retired veteran who always taught her the power of hard work and education. Ellen imagined her grandma's proud smile, her wise words echoing in her mind. You lift yourself up, and you lift others with you. With a deep breath, Ellen opened her laptop, ready to unveil her groundbreaking tech innovation, designed to create jobs and economic opportunities back home. But the excitement in the air teetered when, out of nowhere, a cake flew across the room, splattering against the wall and covering Ellen in frosting. The room froze. Gasps echoed as the chaos unfolded, the cake attack immediately turning the boardroom into a scene of mockery instead of celebration. What was once a moment of triumph was now fodder for social media. Suddenly, Ellen was trending for all the wrong reasons. The laughter, the jeers, it stung. She felt humiliated. Yet, in the midst of her anger and embarrassment, a spark ignited within her. Enough, she whispered to herself. This was more than a cake. This was a symbol of the prejudice she faced, rooted deep in the biases against black women in power. It was time to confront the wrongs instead of letting them shatter her spirit. As she stepped outside, Ellen knew the whispers wouldn't stop. They'd echo in her community, her family checking in with confusion. You okay? Her cousin asked, worry etched on his face. Family loyalty versus ambition weighed heavily on her heart. Her grandmother, ever the moral compass, urged Ellen to remember her roots, but Ellen felt torn. How could she uplift her people if she honored tradition at the expense of progress? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As days passed, Ellen faced the backlash head-on. The online trolls came fast and furious while her self-doubt loomed larger than ever. The dark cloud of public ridicule threatened to swallow her whole. Yet, amid the chaos, Ellen began to craft her response. This was not just about her, it was about everyone who faced similar struggles. With each word she wrote, courage blossomed inside her. At a climactic public event, her heart raced as she took the stage once more. This was her moment to confront the world. The crowd, once doubtful, now leaned in, eager for change. Would this moment of betrayal become a rallying cry? She paused, her breath catching as she felt the weight of history behind her. Let's talk about the truth, she began, her voice steady but emotional. This cake is just the icing on the surface of deeper issues, barriers we need to break down together. It's time we lift each other, not tear each other apart. Ellen knew the stakes were high, and the outcome uncertain. Against the backdrop of doubt and division, she stood tall. Could her moment of humiliation ignite a movement? The crowd held its breath, waiting for the echo of change to resonate amid the layers of prejudice that sought to keep her down. Ellen's journey was about to shift, igniting a beacon of hope for her community. Did she have what it took to turn this cake mishap into a powerful statement for equality and unity? The answer loomed, heavy in the air, yet pulsing with the potential for something great. Ellen took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the crowd's energy wash over her. The skepticism she sensed at first had transformed into curiosity, anticipation sparking in people's eyes. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was a collective fight against the negativity that often thrived in the shadows of success. Every day, we face challenges that can feel insurmountable, she continued, her voice rising with passion. But it's not those challenges that define us. It's how we respond to them. Ellen could see heads nodding, her words weaving through the crowd like a lifeline, connecting people in a shared understanding. As she spoke, her mind wandered to her community back home, the small businesses struggling to survive, families fighting for better futures. She wanted to be their voice, to champion those who felt powerless, just like she once did. The emotional weight of her mission pushed her forward, igniting a fire in her belly that made her feel invincible, despite the layers of doubt piled high against her. Together, she called out, "We can turn this narrative around. We can build bridges instead of walls. We can celebrate our differences instead of ridiculing them." A wave of cheers erupted from the audience, and Ellen felt the adrenaline surge through her veins. Their encouragement was like a chord struck in a long-forgotten song, resonating harmoniously through her spirit. From the back of the room, a young woman raised her hand, tears glistening in her eyes. "You're brave," she choked out, her voice trembling. "Thank you for standing up for all of us." That simple affirmation cracked something open inside Ellen. It wasn't just about fighting the battle alone, it was about empowering others to find their own voices. In that moment, Ellen realized the cake attack had unintentionally spotlighted a deeper issue, one that wasn't just her fight, but a struggle that resonated with many. The thought filled her with an unexpected sense of clarity. Perhaps this was the catalyst for change, the spark that could ignite a larger conversation about equity, resilience, and community empowerment. Ellen envisioned a series of workshops, support networks, and mentorship programs that could uplift voices like hers. She imagined thousands of people coming together to share stories, to build each other up, to refuse to let negativity define their worth. As she wrapped up her speech, she felt exhilarated and terrified all at once. "Let us reflect the greatness that lies within us," she urged, closing her eyes for a second. "Let us rise together. Because when one of us succeeds, we all succeed." The applause was thunderous, her words wrapping around the crowd like a healing balm. Still buzzing from the exhilaration, Ellen stepped off the stage, but the adrenaline didn't fade. She felt a sense of purpose pulsating through her. She wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from a business partner. "We need to talk. Urgent." Ellen's heart sank just a little. What now? Were they ready to shift the narrative, or was there still more than met the eye? As she looked out over the crowd, feeling the fulfillment of her speech linger, uncertainty crept back in. Change was never simple. What was her next move? Would this newfound momentum carry her forward, or would the hurdles ahead prove too daunting? Ellen stood at the precipice of possibility, knowing this moment was just the beginning. She took a deep breath. The world could only change if she dared to lead the way. But what if the darkness that had once overshadowed her steps was only preparing her for a fight far greater than she ever imagined? Ellen stepped off the stage, adrenaline still coursing through her, but now mixed with a twinge of anxiety. She glanced down at her phone, the words, "We need to talk. Urgent," glaring back at her, demanding her attention. She tucked the device back into her pocket, and the vibrant energy of the crowd began to fade, replaced by a sense of foreboding. The applause continued, a distant echo compared to the reality pressing in around her. She took a moment to collect herself, breathing deeply as laughter and chatter floated around her. But then, the warmth from the stage faded, her heart heavy with anticipation. What did her partner want? Was it about the event? Or was it about something more troubling beneath the surface? As she moved through the crowd, people reached out, offering congratulations, their faces lit with hope. Each smile tugged at her heart, reminding her that their stories mattered, that her words had sparked something. The collective experience was what she had envisioned, and yet, shadows danced at the edges of her clarity. "Ellen. Over here." A familiar voice cut through her thoughts. It was Marcus, her longtime partner, pushing his way through the throng. He looked disheveled, worry etched on his face. Ellen's stomach dropped, whatever he had to say couldn't be good. "Hey, we need to talk," he said, glancing around before leading her to a quiet corner. "It's about the campaign. What's wrong?" she asked, her heart racing. "There's been some backlash. People are saying the incident with the cake was staged to drum up publicity. They think we're trying to capitalize on it," Marcus replied, his voice low and urgent. I tried to explain it wasn't like that, but Ellen shook her head, disbelief washing over her. "That's absurd. It was a real moment, my moment." The thought that her intentions could be misconstrued felt like a stab to the gut. "I know," he said, hands raised defensively. "But we need to be proactive. If we don't control the narrative, it'll spiral out of control. We can't afford that." She could feel her pulse quickening, frustration bubbling to the surface. How could anyone reduce her struggle, her triumph, to a mere publicity stunt? The voices of those in the crowd rang in her ears, reminding her of the connection forged through authenticity, shared moments, and the power of vulnerability. "Let them talk," she said defiantly, fire igniting in her belly. "This is bigger than my reputation, Marcus. It's about lifting others up. If we focus on their opinions, we'll lose sight of why we started this journey in the first place." Marcus sighed deeply, the weight of the conversation settling between them. "I get that, but it's a business too. We have a duty to protect our brand." His voice trailed off, leaving an uncomfortable silence in its wake. The tension tightened around them as Ellen weighed her options. Was she going to fight this battle alone, or could she leverage this moment to galvanize her community? "Maybe it's time to turn this discussion into a platform for change," she proposed, her voice almost a whisper. "Let us bring everyone together. Create an event. A town hall. Let people share their experiences and know they're not alone. We can expose the truth." Marcus regarded her with a mixture of concern and admiration. "You're serious?" "Absolutely," she affirmed, determination hardening her resolve. "We will not let the negativity silence us. If we stand strong, we can assert our truth." As he pondered her words, the crowd surged around them, tension melting into a sense of purpose. Ellen leaned into that energy, visualizing the voices that would rise in unity. This could be a chance to turn the tide not just of public opinion, but to forge a movement. But just as quickly as that fire ignited, doubt flickered at the edges of her mind. Could she really rally her community? Were they ready to rise and join her? With uncertainty lurking but hope leading the charge, Ellen felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. One step forward, 2 steps back. Would this moment be their rallying cry or another hurdle on her path? The stakes had never felt higher, and as her gaze swept over the crowd, a new sense of purpose began to take root in her heart. But the real question loomed large: could Ellen transform this chaos into a catalyst for change, or would darkness still loom overhead? Ellen's determination pulsed through her veins, a surge of bravery propelled by the energy of the crowd. She could sense that they were hungry for connection, a longing for solidarity that surged beneath the surface. It felt almost electric, the anticipation crackling in the air around them, yet her own doubts clung to her like a shadow. "Ellen, are you sure about this?" Marcus asked again, his brow furrowed with concern. "We could damage everything we've built. What if they don't care?" "They will care," she declared, her voice steady, lifting the weight of her heart. "We just have to remind them why we started. They need to know we're in this together." She watched as Marcus shifted, torn between his instincts as a partner and his fears as a businessman. Ellen knew he felt the urge to shelter what they'd created, but his hesitation pushed her further. This was bigger than any one project. This was about community, about creating a safe space for voices that had been stifled. "Okay," he finally said, his resignation palpable. "Let us make a plan. But we have to act fast before the negativity gets too loud." Ellen nodded, determination solidifying her resolve. She could almost see it, a community hall filled with people, stories spilling like a rich tapestry of shared struggles and triumphs. They could show the world the truth of their mission, the reality that behind every story, there was pain, hope, and resilience. As she reached for her phone, the noise of laughter and chatter around her faded into a backdrop. A glimmer of excitement sparked inside her, igniting her imagination. What if they brought in local leaders, activists, and those directly impacted by the campaign? Her fingers moved swiftly across the screen, drafting an announcement, her heart racing with every word. "Join us to share your story," echoed in her mind, becoming a grounding mantra. "Let us gather input from the community first," she suggested, looking back at Marcus. "We can create a platform where everyone feels valued. I want them to know their voices matter." Across the hall, someone called Ellen's name, pulling her attention. It was Sarah, a young woman with vibrant curls, vibrant enthusiasm shining through her eyes. Ellen had met her at a previous event, and Sarah had shared how Ellen's work had inspired her to pursue her own dreams. "What is going on? You look determined." Sarah beamed. Ellen felt the warmth of that smile. "We're planning a town hall to talk about everything. I want everyone's experiences to take center stage." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's amazing. People will show up, Ellen. They need this." Encouraged by Sarah's enthusiasm, Ellen felt a swell of hope. This was how change began, a single spark igniting a flame. Others in the crowd began to notice, whispering, exchanging glances filled with curiosity. "It's time," she announced, the vigor in her voice cutting through the whispers. "We are not here just to respond to the backlash, but to embrace our stories and take control of our narrative." The atmosphere shifted, more heads turning toward her, intrigue etched on their faces. Ellen's heart raced as she caught sight of Marcus nodding, cautious but supportive. Then, from the back of the crowd, a disembodied voice cried out, "And what will we do with those who don't understand?" The question hung heavy, a palpable silence falling over them. Ellen's heart thudded, the weight of the responsibility she had embraced pressing firmly down on her. What if they didn't understand? What if the closed minds of others overshadowed their efforts? "Then we bring them into the conversation," she replied, her voice ringing louder now. "We won't hide. We'll stand firm, invite them to learn, and invite them to see the truth." A ripple of applause broke out, hesitant at first, but then growing stronger. Ellen felt a rush of exhilaration, a call to arms. They were ready to turn the tide, but uncertainty lingered. With all the eyes on her, she knew they were teetering on the brink. Would this be a moment of unity, or would their voices struggle to rise above the clamor? Ellen held her breath, waiting for the wave of reactions to crest. Would they come together, or would the fear divide them? As the applause continued to swell, she realized she needed to hold on tight, because the real fight was just beginning. Would their courage be enough to step into the storm ahead? Ellen felt the swell of applause surround her like a warm embrace, but deep down, a flicker of fear danced in her chest. She kept her gaze fixed on the crowd, where faces transformed from skepticism to something softer, something hopeful. "Let us do this together," she called out, her voice steady. "Not just for ourselves but for everyone who needs to feel heard." From the front, a man with a stubbly beard stepped forward. "Will we really include everyone?" His voice trembled slightly, caught between doubt and hope. "Absolutely." Ellen responded, a fire igniting in her belly. "We'll invite everyone, those who agree with us and those who don't. This is about understanding, about building bridges." The crowd murmured, and Ellen could see the seeds of a collective thought taking root. She glanced at Marcus, who was watching her with admiration and something more, a deepening trust. An elderly woman stood, her cane tapping rhythmically on the hardwood floor. "I lost my son to violence 2 years ago," she began, her words heavy but clear. "We need to talk about loss. People need to hear about what we've been through." Ellen felt the room shift, the weight of one woman's pain absorbing the space. "Thank you for sharing that," Ellen said softly, her heart aching. "That's exactly why we're gathering. To share our truths and heal. Tears glistened in the eyes of those nearby, a shared pain breathing life into the room. With each story shared, the atmosphere thickened with connection, linking everyone in an invisible thread of empathy. Ellen couldn't help but feel they were all stepping into something profound, away from headlines and negativity, toward compassion. "Let us make it a reality," Marcus chimed in, a spark of excitement in his voice. "We'll gather stories, invite experts, and find a venue big enough for everyone." Ellen nodded, her heart swelling with pride in both Marcus and the crowd. "We need volunteers," she added. "Everyone can contribute, whether it's helping organize, creating art, or simply being there to listen." More hands started to rise, the expression on many faces shifting from timid to inspired. A sense of belonging washed over her. This was their moment to shine. As the chatter grew louder, Ellen felt a wave of energy pulsing from the crowd, electrifying her resolve. But then, a familiar face stepped forward, one she didn't expect to see. Ben, known for his sharp critiques, stood before her. "Ellen," he began, his voice tense. "I've often disagreed with you. But if we're really doing this, how can we ensure real dialogue? There's just so much anger. What if it backfires?" Ellen took a deep breath. "We don't stay quiet because we fear conflict, Ben. We speak so that we can listen and learn from each other. This won't be easy, but I believe it's worth it." Ben hesitated, his brow furrowing before he nodded slowly. "Okay, I'm in, but I want to help guide the conversation. We've got to make sure it's constructive." A wave of relief washed over her. "Absolutely. Your voice is important. Together, we'll shape it." Seeing Ben join their cause felt like a small victory, a crack in the wall that separated them. The enthusiasm rippling through the hall was palpable. Just as Ellen thought they were building momentum, a loud crash disrupted the moment. A poster board, carrying messages of hope, had toppled over, scattering papers everywhere. The room fell silent. Ellen rushed to gather the disarray, but as she bent down, her heart sank. Mixed with the papers was an uncharacteristically harsh message painted in bold letters: "Your voices don't matter. Quit while you're ahead." The urgency of the moment gripped her tight, panic trying to seep in. How would they respond to this attack on their spirit? "Stay with me," Ellen said, looking up at the crowd, adrenaline fueling her courage. "We can't let this deter us. Let us turn this negativity into a reason to come together even stronger." As she spoke, she felt like she was treading on thin ice, but there was also something invigorating about standing firm in the face of adversity. Would the crowd rally around this attack, or would it sow seeds of doubt? The next few moments felt suspended in time as she waited for their response. Would this setback bring them together or threaten the fragile hope they were building? The energy was on edge, ready to tip either way. The collective breath of the room hung in the air, charged with uncertainty. Ellen's voice echoed, hopeful yet trembling. A few faces turned white with shock, while others tightened their jaws in defiance. The shift was palpable. Some were drawing back, but others leaned in closer, desperate for guidance. Then, from the back, an unexpected voice called out, "Don't let this stop us. We know our worth." It was a young man, his bright eyes sparking like fireflies in the dark. Laughter erupted among some, dispelling tension. Ellen could feel the energy ebb and flow like the tide, and for the first time, panic took a step back. "Yeah," a woman added, standing up and raising her arm with enthusiasm. "We've come too far to let this scare us. Let us fill this room with our stories." One by one, people rose. Their stories spilled out about families torn apart by division, about friendships blossoming through understanding. Every tale was a piece of the mosaic they were creating together, bright and vibrant against the dark message that tried to overshadow them. The elderly woman from earlier stood again, renewed vigor shining in her eyes. "We need to talk about the heartache as well as the healing. Let us share this journey." Ellen felt the tide turning. Each story filled her heart like a warm blanket, wrapping around the anguish of the preliminary attack. It wasn't only about speaking, it was about listening, touching, and transforming pain into connection. Ben stepped forward, his demeanor shifting. There was a fire kindling behind his usual skepticism. "We can create a plan," he said, voice gaining strength. "Let us focus on discussions that inspire real change. We can make this an annual gathering." Cheers erupted from the crowd, and Ellen's heart soared. This moment wasn't just about recovery, it was about resilience and unity. They were becoming a chorus, each voice distinct yet harmonizing in purpose. The incident had added an unexpected layer to their mission. A challenge had emerged, but instead of breaking their spirits, it had ignited a flame. Seeing Ben tap into the collective energy felt monumental, a shift from criticism to collaboration. Ellen's delight bubbled to the surface, her smile wide enough to bridge the distance left by doubt. As laughter mingled with tears, Ellen looked around, soaking in the scene. Faces aglow, their confidence seemed palpable, radiating warmth. She felt a swell of gratitude, aware that this was not just her journey but there's every person in that room woven together by hope. But then the door swung open with a loud bang. Ellen twirled to see a group of protesters march in, their faces fierce and determined. They held placards riddled with messages of dissent, disrupting the atmosphere of hope like thunder in a clear sky. Ellen's heart pounded once more. The fragile thread of connection felt threatened. Would this new challenge reinstate fear, or could they hold on to their newfound strength? "Stay strong," she heard someone whisper. The trembling of her heart surged again. This was the moment that would define them. Would they once again rise, or would they allow doubt to creep back in? She took a deep breath, ready to meet this next wave head-on. Whatever was about to unfold, it was clear that this gathering was transforming from a simple meeting into a profound movement. And there was no turning back now. The protesters entered with a riot of colors and noise, their signs waving high like battle flags. Ellen felt the air turn heavy and electric, her heart racing. The hope she'd felt moments before flickered like a candle in the wind. But she couldn't let that dim. The crowd around her shifted, uncertainty creeping in like shadows. Ellen stepped forward, her voice steady but urgent. "Everyone, remember why we're here. This is about us coming together." A murmur washed over the group, some nodding while others eyed the protesters warily. The leader of the protesters, a tall woman with a fierce glare, stepped closer to Ellen. "You think your stories matter? Look around," she shouted, her voice piercing. "It's time to face the truth." Ellen swallowed hard. Could the fear return? She glanced at Ben, whose brow was furrowed, but a spark of defiance lingered in his eyes. Ellen felt a rush of determination, remembering the submission letters they'd received, each filled with longing for a community built on empathy and shared experiences. "Let us talk about it," Ellen exclaimed, trying to reclaim the moment. "You're right, we need to face the truth. But that starts with communication. Can we listen to each other?" The room quieted. She could see people weighing their options, the protesters caught off guard by Ellen's plea. The leader's stance softened slightly, though her fists remained clenched. "Listen? To you? You're living in a dream world." Ellen understood the anger, the hurt. "I've had my dreams shattered too," she admitted, her voice rising above the tension. "But if we're going to heal, we need to build bridges, not walls. All of us deserve to be heard, even when it's hard." A ripple of agreement echoed around the room. Intrigued faces turned toward the protesters, judging their reaction. Ellen felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this was the opportunity for understanding she had dreamed of. Next to her, a former teacher stood, a gentle smile on her face despite the fierce situation. "What if we all share just one story, our truth, and allow that to guide us? This isn't just about Ellen or Ben or any of us individually. It's about what holds us together." The protesters looked at one another, hesitation written across their faces. The leader seemed to falter, her walls cracking just a bit. "What's the point?" she challenged, but Ellen could hear the uncertainty lurking beneath her words. "Because we're stronger together," another woman chimed in, her voice steady. "Nobody wants to be alone in their pain. This is an invitation to unite rather than divide." The tension in the room was palpable. Ellen felt her heart race, not just with fear, but with anticipation. Would they accept her invitation? The leader stepped back, glancing at her group. "If we share, we might just find some ground. But mark my words, it won't end here." Ellen nodded, her breath catching. This was not just about healing, it was about reckoning. Her heart swelled with a mix of anxiety and excitement. The stories began to flow, honest yet tentative. The first was a young man who spoke of losing his father to violence. The next was an immigrant who recounted her struggles, tears glistening in her eyes. Bit by bit, they each laid a piece of their heart bare. As the stories wove through the air, Ellen felt the power of vulnerability transform the atmosphere. Hearts began to soften, and the heavy tension lightened, almost imperceptibly. What would be revealed in the next few moments could change everything. Would they find true commonality, or would a fresh rift emerge? Ellen braced herself for whatever lay ahead, her eyes scanning the crowd, expecting the unexpected. Ellen held her breath as the stories continued to flow, each voice weaving a vital thread into the tapestry of shared experiences. She could see that people were listening, really listening. The protesters, once so combative, were looking less like adversaries and more like fellow travelers on a weary road. There was a charged energy in the room, like a storm brewing, ready to either break apart or push through. A middle-aged woman with a shaking voice stepped forward, her hands trembling as she clutched her own story. "I lost my brother to gun violence," she said, her words spilling out like the torrent of emotions behind them. "And every day, I wonder what I could have done differently." The murmurs that rippled through the crowd held an undeniable weight. Ellen felt the ripples turn into waves of empathy. The raw honesty brought tears to her eyes. She glanced at the leader of the protesters, who stood rigid yet captivated, her fierce expression softening with every word spoken. Next, a young man shared a story of discrimination he faced because of the color of his skin. He spoke not so much in anger, but from a place of heartache and hope. "I'm not a stereotype," he asserted. "I'm just a guy trying to make a better life for myself. Every time someone assumes the worst of me, I fight to prove them wrong." As the crowd absorbed his words, Ellen felt the barriers that had once divided them beginning to stitch together, threading their pain into a shared understanding. Beneath it all, she realized she wasn't just listening to stories of loss, she was witnessing transformations. Faces that had been marked with skepticism began to soften, anger turned to contemplation, and uncertainty took the shape of curiosity. Finally, the leader of the protesters stepped out of the shadows, her expression ambivalent but pained. "I'm here because I've seen what hatred can do, and I can't stand by. But what if sharing only opens old wounds? What if it tears us apart?" Ellen felt her heart race. This was the moment. "It can," she admitted, her voice steady. "But it can also heal. We've been carrying our stories alone for too long. Together, we can use our pain to build something better." The room fell into a heavy silence. Ellen scanned the audience, finding supportive nods mixed in with hesitant glances. It was a crossroads, a delicate moment poised between fear and possibility. Would they choose to bare their souls or turn away, back to the familiar paths of division? Just then, a younger girl stood. She couldn't have been more than 12. "Can I share too?" Her voice trembled, but her eyes were fierce. "I wanted to tell my dad that I love him. He works so hard, but he's always tired. I don't want him to feel alone." Ellen's heart swelled, a mix of pride and sadness flooding through her. This child understood something fundamental, something that could knit them closer together. The crowd shifted, absorbing the weight of her words. "Please," Ellen said, her voice barely above a whisper, "don't ever stop sharing. You remind us all why we're here. The spirit in the room shifted again, as murmurs rose and subtle smiles punctuated the tension, the little girl's courage sparking something deep within each person present. Ellen felt a wave of hope wash over her as people began to realize the power of connection, the need to bridge gaps their stories had created, but just as the atmosphere reached its peak, a loud crash interrupted the moment. A protester's sign fell, splintering the soft emerging light around them. Murmurs of concern swept through the crowd as eyes darted toward the source of the disruption. Ellen's heart dropped. The unexpected had arrived once more, and she could feel the crumbling tension return. Would this fracture the progress they had just made? All her fears rushed back as she faced the uncertainty ahead. Would they come together in strength, or would they dissolve in the chaos? Ellen steadied her breath, preparing for whatever wave would hit next. Could this fragile moment become the turning point they needed, or would it slip through their fingers like so many before? The noise of the fallen sign echoed like a gunshot in the heavy silence, jolting everyone back to the moment. The atmosphere thickened, tension crackling in the air. Ellen's heart raced as she watched the room shift, anticipation hanging like clouds ready to burst. The leader of the protesters, Ashanti, had shifted her gaze to the fallen sign, her expression hardening again. What happened? She questioned sharply, her voice cutting through the murmurs. As if to answer, a member of her group stepped forward, face flushed. It's just a sign, Ashanti. Nothing serious. But was it? Ellen's mind reeled. It was a small thing, and yet, it felt monumental. It represented everything: the fragility of their progress, the danger of unresolved tensions. She stepped forward, feeling compelled to reclaim the moment. Maybe this is what we need, she said, drawing on the strength she found in the stories shared. Let us talk about what's uncomfortable. Let us name our fears, rather than let them build walls between us. A murmur rose again, this time laced with apprehension. What if we can't take it? A man from the back said, the tremor in his voice evident. His vulnerability hung in the air, and it felt like everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see how this would unfold. Ellen inhaled deeply. We won't know unless we try. Each of our stories has value. They're like pieces of a puzzle, showing the bigger picture. She glanced around, searching for allies. We need to face what divides us, if we want to find what unites us. In the back, the young girl from earlier stood, her small frame radiating a surprising light. My dad says every story matters. Some stories are hard to hear, but if we can talk about them, we can all feel better. Her directness cut through the remaining unease, leaving warmth in its wake. Ellen smiled, and slowly, heads began to nod. That's right, she affirmed. Every voice matters. Let us let each other into our lives, into our truths. Together, we can break down these walls. The air shifted again, an electric current sparking as uncertain smiles glided through the crowd. The mixed group began to adopt a collaborative dynamic, their warmth overlapping like quilts stitched together, unafraid to show their seams. Ashanti still appeared torn, but Ellen caught her eye, holding it with a steady gaze and an understanding nod. It was a hint of hope blossoming, a breakthrough on the horizon. As the discussions began in vulnerable whispers, Ellen joined in, hearing stories of struggle, triumph, laughter, and loss, each exchange deepening their connections. And yet, as voices melded into a chorus of shared human experience, a sharp knock echoed from the back of the room, slicing through like a sudden gust of wind. Head turned, eyes wide. What could this mean? There was an unmistakable sense of urgency growing in the air. Ellen's insides twisted, uncertainty gnawing at her. She had felt them moving forward as one, but what if this was a sign of disruption? What if the sound served to shatter their fragile unity again? In that suspended moment, she felt a resolute determination blooming within her. She couldn't let fear win. Gripping the edges of the podium, she breathed deep once more. Would they see the opportunity to embrace honesty, to welcome the pushback? Would they choose connection over chaos? The crowd waited with bated breath as the door began to creak open, heavy with the weight of unknown possibilities. As the door swung wide, a man stepped inside, his presence commanding immediate attention. He was an elder, hands trembling slightly yet determined. The shift in the atmosphere was palpable, a thick blanket of anticipation enveloped the room. Ellen's heart thrummed, half excited and half nervous. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he began, his voice calm yet firm. "I just wanted to share my story. I used to be a part of this community once, long ago, but I've felt disconnected." His eyes glimmered as he spoke. "I lost my son, and I've carried that weight alone for too long. I see your courage, and it makes me believe that maybe, just maybe, I can start to heal." Ellen felt her chest tighten with empathy. There it was, the rawness of pain, a shared humanity binding them all. The crowd shifted, leaning in, some with tears brimming. He continued, "It's easy to let hurt divide us, but we have to remember how powerful our stories are when shared." The room held its breath, sensing the gravity of the moment. Ellen stepped closer, allowing the man's words to resonate. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "Thank you for sharing that profound truth with us. This is what we're trying to build. A space where we can be real, a place for each of us to lift our voices." More stories began pouring out, one after another, like water bursting from a dam. Ellen could see people connecting with one another, barriers crumbling in the face of authenticity. Ashanti's fierce gaze softened further as she watched the healing unfold. The earlier tension evaporated, replaced with an undeniable energy, a growing web of empathy spanning the room. Then Ellen took a breath, fueled by the momentum building. "Let us create something that lasts. This isn't just a one-off gathering, it's the start of our movement. We'll create regular meetings, workshops, initiatives that allow voices like yours to be celebrated." Cheers erupted. Voices joined as they suggested ideas: community lunches, art showcases, storytelling nights. Each suggestion infused the gathering with a renewed sense of purpose. What had once been fragmented now felt like a rising wave, harnessing a significant force bound by shared experiences. That energy continued flowing as Ellen and Ashanti exchanged glances, a silent alliance forming. Ellen turned to her passionately. "You've led people here today by your desire to confront the truth. Let's build upon that. We can guide this conversation forward." With a nod of agreement, Ashanti stepped forward, her eyes bright with determination. "For too long, we've let fear hold us back. But now, we want to just share our struggles. We'll turn them into action. Imagine what we can accomplish together." The crowd erupted again, their voices woven together in anticipation of the journey ahead. Ellen felt the warmth of that collective spirit wash over her, igniting her heart with hope. But then, as the laughter and applause settled, the man who had first shared his grief raised a hand again, this time trembling with urgency. "And what happens to those who still resist change? How do we bridge that divide?" Ellen knew in that moment that he had voiced a common fear, and she had to address it. "We invite them in, just as we have done here," she responded, the crowds leaning in. "We show them our truths. We don't fight ignorance with anger, we fight it with understanding. Each one of us can be a beacon." With each word, Ellen saw warmth radiate through the crowd. They were becoming a tapestry, their voices intertwining to form a strong fabric of change. The spark was ignited, and they would fan that flame to reach every corner of their community. "This is the moment we define who we are," she shouted, the passion in her voice driving everyone forward. "Let us nourish this momentum, share our stories, and create unity where there was once division." The crowd erupted in roars of agreement. Ellen felt tears prick her eyes as the joy spilled over. After the cake attack had threatened to break her spirit, she had transformed the chaos into something beautiful, a movement rooted deep in authentic connection and hope. In that moment of joyful celebration, Ellen realized the journey would be long, but they had set forth a course invigorated by their shared experiences. The whispers of doubt still lingered, but she knew they could navigate anything together. As she stood before this ever-growing crowd, Ellen's heart swelled. They were not just allies, they were family. And together, they would rise. You need to subscribe now to our channel so you never miss an exclusive story. This is the moment to show your support for our mission and these beautiful transformations. Leave a like now to help us reach more hearts and feed the algorithm. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending. Your voice matters. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this message of unity and hope. Don't wait not even one more second to share, because real change starts with us standing together.